This. What is this? What book is this? Can you see under the light? Ah, there we go. I don't know if you can see that, but all those ha ha ha's and that panel there of Batman and Joker. This is Batman the Killing Joke. And this is a very, very famous graphic novel, but Alan Moore doesn't like to call them graphic novel. He likes to call them comics. So we'll call it a comic. But, you know, even though he's the expert, I would say there's nothing comic about them. I mean, obviously there are some jokes, but no more than average, unless you think about the Marvelification, the MCUification specifically of dialogue these days. But this is not that. All the jokes in here are relevant to the fact that it's the Joker, or they are actually how people talk and the actual ratio at which people tell jokes and the actual way they tell jokes. Um, so why do I have this? Well, I read this before a long time ago. My friend bought it for me as a birthday present when I was probably about 12 or 13 or something. And I was excited by the prospect of reading a really famous comic. But it didn't really have any effect on me because I knew it was famous, but I wasn't able to actually have it sink in and I wasn't able to get anything particularly from it. So I very much thought, well, I'll just put that away, and I'm glad I've at least consumed something that's very famous and acclaimed. I went back to it recently because a few weeks ago I asked myself the question, do comic books count as literature? And obviously, by technical definition, anything can be literature. It's a definition that sort of exists to cover almost everything. But I wondered if specifically comic books achieved the same thing that literature achieves at its best. That was the metric I was actually going by. When a book is at its best, is a comic book able to achieve that same level of quality? Is the best comic book in the world equivalent to an average book? A can the best of a comic book be at the same level as the best of a novel? That's what I wanted to find out. So I bought 4 books of Waterstones a couple of weeks ago. I bought Spider-Man: A Brand New Day. I believe that's Brian Michael Bendis, but if I'm wrong about that, I'll put a little. It'll be around here, a little edited inscription. And I was disappointed by that. I bought it because I wanted to. It had the same name as the film that's coming out soon, so I thought, well, I want to see, if that gives me a sort of education on the film, then I'll actually have like a really interesting head start on everyone else in the movie theater, in the cinema, and at least I'll be at the sort of top level of understanding what I'm going to consume, and that would be a nice feeling. But actually wasn't that interesting. It was just okay, and actually had a lot more in common with the Spider-Man PS4 game with Mr. Negative and that whole storyline, and obviously a little bit different, but largely that was the clear thing that it spawned off into. I doubt that the film has much to do with it. I think it's probably more to do with the fact that it's like a soft reboot in that it's trying to go a new direction, and that's what the comic book did, because apparently the one just before it and the run just before it was really unpopular and not well received. So they were kind of wanting to come back from the brink and tell all the comic book readers, hey, Marvel's going to be good again with Spider-Man. We promise we won't let Spider-Man down anymore. We know that you love Spider-Man. So that was really interesting. I'll put the name as well of the comic book before it that was super unpopular, not to dog on it, but just to give the historical reason. Maybe one day I'd like to check that out actually, because I like seeing things that are infamous just as much as I like seeing things that are acclaimed. The second comic book I bought, and I got them all at the same time, so I'll just say them in a random order. I got Secret Wars. I don't mean the old one from, I think it's the 60s. Again, if that's wrong, if it's 70s or 80s or something, I'll put it up there. But my goodness me, I was so excited for that one, and it was the worst of the bunch. Now, I know there's going to be gasps there from comic book fans. I'm well aware that it's a very well reputed comic book. That's why I bought these comic books. It was set up to be something I should love. Okay, I love the Fantastic Four. I love Doctor Doom. He's my favorite comic book villain. Um, I loved the idea of him becoming God Emperor Doom. That just sounds so cool. And I thought he'll finally get, and I don't mean that he normally doesn't get flowers, but he'll finally get such a centerpiece of the story rather than just being the villain. I was so excited for that. And there's a comic book about Doom with his origins and stuff. Again, I'll put it up there, which is really, really good. And it's all about, how he became the man he was, his rivalry with Reed when they were teenagers and stuff. And there are really interesting parts about his mother, who was like a witch, and she made a deal with, I can't remember what Satan is called in Marvel Comics. It's like something like Mr. Mistopheles or something like that, some sort of Faustian name for him. But yeah, she does some sort of deal with him and everything, and then she ends up dying, and how Victor got the mask, and oh, it's so good. It's like he's such a good kind of example of competence, and he's such a good villain because the word villain isn't the first thing that comes to mind with him. It's competence, and it's the fact that he actually is adored and competent leading his people, a villain with his own country, who does both magic and science, but takes the magic so seriously that it doesn't feel really kiddie and silly, and just I'm going to do a bit of this and that's magic, and or wave a wand or something. It's like that, there's that line, I can't remember, is it the Avengers where, um no, it's in Thor, in the first Thor, where Thor says, about the fact that magic is just science you don't understand yet, or something like that. Again, I'll put the quote. um or it's just science that your people don't have a name for yet, I think he might say. That's how Doom treats it. He treats it like a discovered extra branch of science, and I love that. And I think his design is wonderful as well. And all the stuff that it's bred, like all the stuff with MF Doom, I'm such a fan of. I love that whole aesthetic, and I'm glad Doom was able to, MF Doom was able to, sort of take that and not hopefully get in too much trouble about it. I don't know if he ever had a big legal battle over the Doom stuff or not, because he uses old cartoon samples and things in his songs that relate to Doom. And especially if you've listened to Operation Doomsday or Food or anything like that, then you'll know there's a lot of Doom samples from like really old Spider-Man cartoons and things like that. So enough talk. You what is it? What is it? Enough talk. You talk of the people's rights. The people have only those rights I choose to give them. I love that. So that's my vision of Doom, and I really, 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 really like him as a character. I find him so compelling. Secret Wars was not the one. I just couldn't care less. There's an incursion event happening. Both universes are scrambling to try and save try and be the one to actually survive this event. Basically, sort of universes colliding, imploding, collapsing in on each other, and there's a chance for one of them to be the one to make it out, and it's the Reed Richards, who are the smartest men in their respective universes, who are able to be the one to survive, and they're all clinging on in ways like that. And in it, Doom ends up saving his sort of universe by kind of creating a pocket sort of universe. And that just sounds great. That's a great hook and sort of and what have you. But the universe itself, um, had a lot of potential that I just don't think it fulfilled. You have like this army of Thors, and you have uh everyone playing their own role, and like sort of trials and kinds of things like that. I get it, like I do get it, but none of it's compelling, none of it's interesting, and I think it spends so much time trying to be this event that nothing is ever fleshed out enough. Now, I will add a huge asterisk to this, a huge one, which is that I cannot be bothered to read around events. If you actually look up how many comic books are involved in the Secret Wars event, it's mind boggling. You have all these different characters who have any involvement whatsoever, and then all the different issues of their run that are impacted before, during, after. You have like prologue stories and side stories and all these kinds of things, that mean that if you want to get the full sort of Secret Wars experience, you'd be reading for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And I just don't think that's a productive use of time. I think the actual thing should be a real showstopper, and it definitely tried to be, but they made Doom lame. I thought when they made him God Emperor Doom, he was going to be incredibly powerful and charismatic and sort of the sort of actualized version of Doom in every way. Instead, he's someone who is so weak because he's still pining after this life with Sue, and he's got it because he willed it into existence. But there's a kind of obsession thing, as in the film, going on here where she is not psychologically actually having consented to this because it's just been willed by God Emperor Doom. It's not actually who she is, and his daughter's investigating him and stuff, and there's actually a great story in there if you took it to the really human level, but it never does. It doesn't take it to a human level. It just becomes an event and part of his unbecoming, which I found very boring. The two reads together, one is evil, one is not, and nothing interesting was done with that. One's evil, the maker, one's not. Well, does that go anywhere? Not particularly. It's just the most obvious thing ever that there will be betrayal and what have you. Um, and Doom just does nothing. He does nothing the whole time. At every point, there are things going wrong in his reality. Either something's breaking in the reality itself and the design of it, or there are insurgency operations where there are rebels and all kinds of factions that are against him and trying to overthrow him. And you have to ask, well, the same thing that many atheistic viewpoints might ask about the actual Christian worldview, which is, that classic question of, well, if God is omnipotent and omniscient, why doesn't he just snap his fingers and get rid of the devil, get rid of evil, get rid of sin, and just make everything good? Why does he allow suffering, that sort of thing, right? Well, God Emperor Doom does bugger all the whole time that he's being told that people are like being in battles to protect his kingship and his legacy. And you know full well that he could just arrive and destroy them all really, really easily and quickly. He just does nothing. He just says, "Oh well, send some of the Thors, or it'll sort itself out," or "Okay, let me know what the outcome is," or whatever. He just sits by a tree the whole time. It's embarrassing. Um, and yeah, I won't go more into Secret Wars because I actually have a million problems with it. And actually, I realize as I'm talking about it that I haven't even thought about it for a long time because I had just kind of cast it out of my brain as something I wish I hadn't done. Although I don't really mean I wish I hadn't done it, because it's always better to have an opinion on things, even if it's negative. It's good to know where you stand on things. So I don't regret it in that sense. I'm glad I added it to my having read list, but what a disappointment. The third comic book I bought in that haul was House of M, which was also a disappointment. And everyone talks about that one as such a classic. I like X-Men. I like the Grant Morrison stuff. I like the Uncanny X-Men and all the run. I'll go grab the run that I grew up with. This is the run I grew up with. Essential X-Men, okay, with this purple-haired guy or pink-haired guy. And that was the stuff, let me tell you. That was the stuff. This I enjoyed so much as a child. I used to very much so go and spend my pocket money the second I got it on X-Men comics in the corner shop with Mr. Patel, and I used to make sure that not a penny of my money went towards food, upkeep, anything like that. Perhaps Vimto sweet rolls, fizzy rolls. That, to be fair, I did. I did part of 50 pence a time on those, while that I'd be eating while I read my X-Men comics. Is that not the best cover you've ever seen? With the Brood, and I believe that's Kitty Pryde there. Gosh, that is some real sort of Cronenberg-esque horror, isn't it? Brilliant stuff. So as you can see, I still have those because I cherish them. So don't think I don't like X-Men. House of M was a snooze fest. And I wonder as well if I would be more favorable towards it if I hadn't seen the storyline somewhat adapted. Now, why do I say somewhat? Because in Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, they go for the Wanda turns mad because she wants children that she's manifesting, and the things she's manifesting aren't real, and the reality she manifests isn't real. Again, quite similar to the Doom stuff. And so that sends her mad and vengeful and protective and defensive and all the rest, right? It's sort of that kind of protective animal mother. Don't approach her children, it will be more violent because she's looking after her children, that sort of vibe. I like that. But it still doesn't go where I want it to go. It spends too much time on things about Quicksilver that don't feel important, and Magneto never feels powerful or interesting in it. He's sort of framed, but that's it. And I just don't see what part of the storyline um, anyone gets out of it that makes it this grand classic. And honestly, I think that the only reason people like it are the implications of the event on future stories. But you're talking about the last, what is it, 4 pages or something like that, where, spoilers, Wanda says, no more mutants. I believe that's the line. And so she just, all powerfully removes people with the mutant gene. Now, I know for sure that there are still some. I know it just deletes a lot of them, right? So I don't know, and I'll probably put the explanation here why not literally all mutants, but it's probably something to do with, let's say, for example, Charles in the brain, protecting them mentally or something like that, or they were inside her reality. So when she did it, it didn't affect the ones outside the reality or something like that. There will be some logic to it. I obviously don't think it's a mistake on Marvel's part. That really isn't a problem I have. The problem I have is that the comic itself isn't entertaining just because the implications and the consequences of it are enormous for the universe at large. That doesn't make something good, it makes it important. Um, so that was the third one. And the fourth one was Civil War. It was Civil War. And again, that's one I've seen because with House of M, I said it somewhat adapted it. Why did I say that? Well, it's because uh, they didn't go all the way. They didn't go to the No More Mutants part. They never went there, and you know why they didn't go there because there hadn't even been any mutants yet in Marvel at that point. And if they had, they hadn't called them mutants. And if they had, it was the smallest possible pocket of them you could ever imagine. It was not showing an expansive world where mutants are an actual percentage of the population. Um, so they didn't go all the way with that because they couldn't, and that was the most interesting part of it. So they didn't go there. And in Civil War, the film, which is very good, it's one of their best films, no question about it. Um, in Civil War, that comic book is not good. I've seen actually a good critical discourse of this on YouTube, which I will pop there so that you can check out. But basically, I don't need to repeat any of the actual critical points, apart from the simple fact that comic books have never felt more like they're for children when you read Civil War, and never more like they're trying to be adult. That is the worst combination you could ever get because it's trying to be edgy and say, oh, look, we're dealing with a topic like, home terrorism and registration of vigilantes and government interference and that sort of thing. But the problem is what the comic book boils down to, and when I say boils down to, I don't mean that it takes a lot of reworking to get there. What I mean is at its elemental level, all it ever does really is get toy here and toy here. Let's say what's something not noisy, bookmark, and say, "Have you ever seen these guys fight? Look at this. Look." And that's not entertaining because you have to have a strong foundation. Uh, And don't say, oh, well, there is a strong foundation for why they're fighting because the whole premise is the foundation. I know they got a good premise, and that was all they did, all the work they put into it to do the whole thing, to justify the whole thing. I can now put any fight I want in because I came up with a good premise. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't mean that I'm entertained in some electrified, galvanized Thor clone who somehow has the powers of Thor and is a psychopath and is like half robot or something, um, going crazy on the battlefield. That's the most childish idea I've ever heard. And we're going to kill someone off because we're dark and edgy. But oh, wait, it's someone you didn't care about anyway, but we're going to treat it like it's this great Marvel death. It's ridiculous. And I'm so glad that absolutely none of that made its way onto the screenwriter's page for the film. That's one of the rare instances where the films like so clearly are above the written media. That itself would be a great idea for a video. Novels rarely are surpassed by their film adaptations. Very rarely. You can honestly count on one hand the amount that do. Um, or at least I can. I'm sure there are experts in the field who know plenty, but it is few anyway. It's by far, um, the inverse of what they would want it to be. But do comic books have a similar ratio? I would wager that the gap is not as big as people as it is with novels and film adaptations. I would bet that there are. I wonder how forgiving comic book fans are about it because I know comic book fans are very defensive about their medium, very, very defensive. Comic book fans want to say to you, look, I like this thing. It's serious art. This is a graphic novel, not a comic. This is R-rated. This has blood in it. This has guts in it. This has gore in it. This has sex in it. This has drugs in it. And they really want to talk through why it's an adult enjoyment, not a childhood enjoyment, and why it's literature, why it's great art, all that sort of thing. Why it's like even a sort of perfect medium because it allows for imagic representation that helps you with picturing it, but you still have to picture what happens between the panels and the movements and what have you, so you have a clearer picture, but you're still having to do a lot of work in the brain to get it fully in there as a story, and there's still work that you have to do. I can see all of that argument, and I do think that many of them should be taken very seriously as literature. Still a small percentage of the overall, in my view, but there certainly are works that are well worth enjoying. And I precisely wanted to test that by looking at by buying the four that I bought. None of them proved to me that it was a serious form of literature. None of them. Um, that was really disappointing because I was actually expecting them to. I was hoping that those ones would hold their own, and they're bloody expensive as well. I mean, from Waterstones, I know that's probably the worst place you could possibly buy a comic book for good value. And recently, the ones I've I've downloaded on Kindle Unlimited because a lot of those are free on Kindle Unlimited. You do a £10 subscription, but even if you don't want to do a subscription, the Kindle stuff's really cheap. Now, I don't like Kindle for novels, even though I have thousands of novels on Kindle, but the price is just unbeatable. And for comic books, because I don't like reading a long form novel with loads and loads of words that I have to think carefully about, and I want to underline and annotate, and I can't. And I know there's a way of doing it, but I don't like the way of doing it, and I don't like having to sort of fiddle about and none of that's good. I like something in my hand. I like to note it. I like something I can pass to my children and keep in shelves and all that sort of business. I mean, if you have a look, it always looks like I don't read much when I go in this room, and all booktubers very much like to show off how many books they've got and get as many in the camera view as possible. I hope it shows a lot about me that I don't, but as you can see on the desk where I record, there are absolutely plenty of books, and down there there's boxes and boxes more, and comic books and mangas in the back there. So I do have plenty of books around me. And I like to have lots of books around me. Who was the writer who said that without stacks of books in the room, I cannot sleep. It was probably someone like Borges, but I can't remember, and I'll put it up there. Anything I can't remember, or any facts I ever say that I think are dubious, like dates and things like that, and titles, I'll always put the correction above. So what I was getting to was that the Civil War film's better. Question is, on average, are film adaptations as good as comics? On average, are they better than comics? Or on average, are they worse but at a smaller gap? I will not hear any nonsense about the fact that they're absolutely never anywhere near as good as the comics. I just don't buy it for a second, because it's a popular entertainment that is very much sort of popcorn entertainment. It's very tasty, it's very action packed, it's very fun, it's explosive and all that. The films have that just as much as the comics, no question about it. Maybe the comics sometimes reach for more conceptual, higher ideas, like the Secret Wars idea and things like that. Maybe, but we're getting to the point where that's easier to do as well, because you have audience acceptance of what story can be told in a comic book film. It's no longer just an origin story of a man getting goo on them, which was green and radioactive, and now they are some enormous eagle or something like that. But all of this loops around to saying that my revisitation of The Killing Joke was fantastic. And as I say the word fantastic, I'm tempted to say phantasmic, because I read this in conjunction with watching the Mask of the Phantasm film, which I have the same relationship with, because I watched Mask of the Phantasm at probably the same age, and it did nothing to me the same way Killing Joke did nothing to me. I understood that it was legendary in its reputation, and I understood that a lot of people feel a lot about it, and that almost no one dislikes it. But I just couldn't keep up with it, kind of thing, and I just found it dull, and there was nothing in it that seemed to me particularly exciting in any way. Okay, so there's a villain with a fairly ordinary design and a fairly ordinary voice, and oh, shock, there's a little twist about who it is, and Batman finding his feet. I probably read the year one comic already at that point, so I already have read plenty about Batman finding his feet, and who hasn't seen the films on that, Batman Begins and such like. So I really didn't see what all the fuss was about with Phantasm. I just assumed it was like another time when it was made, and that for the time it was some great revelation. But I just thought, well, I won't doubt it, because I won't go around telling people it's awful, because if they feel so strongly about it that it's great, there must be some greatness in it. But now that I'm older, I don't take that view anymore about things. As with Secret Wars, I'm more than happy to critique things, even if they are universally beloved. Um, but I'm very happy to say this was a great story of redemption, because as an adult, I found that The Killing Joke totally opened up for me, and it's so small and so compact and concise, that it ends up being such a cohesive piece of work, where every single panel is worth stopping and looking at and taking in, and wondering if there's some extra meaning to it, and wondering what it means in the grand scheme of things, if it calls back to any other ideas, how the art interplays with what's being said, if it's foreshadowing, if it's playing with time, and how character dialogues from other scenes bleed into having relevance to other times and places and things. It's such a well-made piece of writing, because at every level, the art and the writer are completely simpatico, and so clearly see eye to eye. Now, I know that some people are going to say, well, I actually have read in the introduction to this or somewhere else, because I read it in the introduction. Actually, I think it might be in the afterword, that the writer, uh, Alan, who wanted to do this Joker origin story and stuff, that was an idea that really got the artists back up. And I will just make sure I get the Brian Bolland did the art and the colouring. Okay, I don't want to not include him, because he is no less central than Alan Moore is in this, and I really mean that, because his art is absolutely incredible. I mean, I just opened a totally random page, but look at that! Good lord! I mean, it's just phenomenal. Look at that cape. Look at that silhouette. Look at the the Batmobile and the freaks and oh my Joker's expressions and totally multifaceted in every way and totally atmospheric. I mean, it reaches so many ideas but never lets them escape the bubble that it's created for itself. And I mean that in a good way. It keeps totally cohesive. Um, so even though um, Bolland didn't want the story of the Joker's origins, he was able to accept that Moore had made it multiple choice, and I think that was a very strong idea on Moore's part because it is like totally delicious as a writer if you discover that this great character of the Joker doesn't have an origin story. And I understand that the Red Hood origin story had its place decades previous, but it was like forgotten and buried. And Moore brought it back into a more sort of, I don't want to say canonical because there are plenty of people who don't want to accept it, but brought it into a book which became canonical. The book became canonical. But the fact that he added that insurance about the Joker saying, I prefer my past to be multiple choice, genius, because you've covered your back, but in a non cowardly way, because it works for the character. It works for both types of readers who want to read this going, wow, this is amazing. This is the Joker's origin. Or the ones who say, well, yeah, he's just so crazy, he's making this up. And and then even the implications of that, which are, is he so crazy that he literally is imagining in depth something that never happened to him? Or is this close to what really happened? Or is this actually what happened? And he imagines lots of other things, but this is the real one. And is it some spin on what happened, etc., etc., etc.? Okay, and is that more telling that story, or is that Joker thinking about that story? I mean, there's sort of no proof that Joker actually lived that. So there are times when it shows reflections in the mirror where he's looking and the reflection matches the backstory, but that doesn't mean it did happen just because he's looking in a reflection the same way. Um, it's done twice. Once when he's looking in the glass where there's a clown behind it, and once where he's looking in the water, and both times it's the same. It's just phenomenal. So I had the same experience with Mask of the Phantasm. My goodness, what a film! I've watched it twice in the last sort of 48 hours, and I've got this new idea where if a film isn't worth watching twice in 48 hours, it's probably not worth having watched once because obviously it's worth watching something once to just tick off if you know that you like it or what have you, and to have understood your place in that particular property. But I think that the Nabokovian sense of in the essay "Good Readers and Good Writers" that a good reader is a rereader, um, and that you can only say that you've read a book once you've reread a book. And a lot of my students really fight this idea. They say, "I can hardly read a book once, let alone you want me to read it twice. It doesn't count." I wouldn't really sort of. I don't ever impress that upon them because it's the sort of philosophy you can only have when you're comfortable in the fact that you're already a strong habitual reader. If it's a passion for you, then you'll go, yeah, of course I want to read it again, and of course it has enough richness in there that I want to explore. If you're not looking for richness, you're looking for a bit of entertainment, you're probably not going to watch anything twice or listen to anything twice. Or and I don't mean music by that, obviously. I mean whether it's an audiobook or a spoken story. Um, because music is always the great exception in art. It's always the art form that refuses to confine itself to the boundaries of all other art forms. Maybe that's another video though. But anyway, Mask the Phantasm, it just works on literally every level, and I feel so similar about them. I think they're so similar. They're both incredibly gothic. They're both, you characterizing the Joker beautifully. They both have a beautiful interpretation of all the characters. But the reason they're similar is because the dialogue is perfect. Not a single line is wasted, and basically every line is quotable. I mean, literally, like every line, like from Phantasm, just from memory, like surprised didn't. What happened? Did you trip over a pile of cash on the floor or something like that? And like jujitsu is meant to be taken seriously, and but insert criminal name. Your angel of death awaits you. Fantastic. Um, but just the noir sort of ghostly gothic atmosphere throughout, which is obviously inspired by the Tim Burton stuff that came before it, which is delicious. Batman Returns is tied. I'm trying to decide if it's number one or if it's tied number one, you know? But my two favorite Batman films are Batman Returns and The Batman, the Robert Pattinson one. Everyone's going to say, "What? Dark Knight?" But Dark Knight's not even three. Batman Begins is three. Um, Four is Dark Knight. Five is the original Batman, as in Michael Keaton, 1989. Then six would be Rises. Seven would be Batman, the 1966 one, which I still really enjoy, by the way. Um, and then obviously all the animated stuff is a conversation for another day. Where does Batman versus Superman fit in that? Well, that would depend entirely on whether we're talking about Ultimate Edition or not. And also, if you're wondering, Ben Affleck is maybe my favorite Batman. So I do think very highly on his performance. I think Batman versus Superman Ultimate Edition gets a placement probably above 89 and above is it though? Oh, I don't really want to get into that because it's so sticky. Because Ultimate Edition is an extra half an hour. It does make it a lot better. And as I say, Affleck is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, on-screen Batman. Um, I really hope Pattinson delivers in this next one because there's a lot of excuses around Pattinson's Batman in that, well, it's year one and or it's year two maybe, and he's trying to come to terms of being Batman and he doesn't have all the characteristics of a mature one, but the later films will. God, I hope it's a trilogy. God, I really do. I do want that to end up being true. I don't want him to be the way he was in the first one all the way. I hope that last scene with the flare and everything is that redemptive maturation arc happening. Yeah, anyway, that's an amazing film. Um, I think Batman Returns is maybe my favorite. It's just there's something deliciously rewatchable about the Batman. I don't know what it is. Something in those films that I think is just atmosphere, because The Dark Knight doesn't have an atmosphere, and everyone's going to jump on this. I don't care. It has some of the best scenes ever. It's one of the best made films. It's just perfectly constructed, structurally incredible, casting incredible. Set pieces incredible, moments so memorable. It doesn't have an atmosphere. You can't tell me it has an atmosphere. There's nothing interesting about Gotham. There's nothing particularly sort of heroic about Batman's suit or his voice, or and I don't need him to be like Lancelot or some great knight or something. I'm here to save you, my dame. No, I don't mean that by heroic. I just mean sort of a silhouette that you go, wow, that's Batman. There isn't that in The Dark Knight. There isn't, because it's all focused on being grounded, and that works for Nolan. Everyone who dogs on Nolan for wanting to bring it all grounded doesn't understand that an artist has to put things in the area that they're able to best perform in. So that was the best Batman trilogy Nolan could have made because he made it Nolan. But there's something beautiful about Tim Burton's snowy Batman Returns. Absolutely phenomenal. And that sort of red and black dun 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 dun. Hopefully that doesn't get copyright struck, but I've heard of crazy stories about how easily things can be detected. But that is literally that anthem. Was not an anthem, but that tune plays in my head as I read these sorts of comics. Um, Anyway, the point is, and I'm just going to let these videos be as tangential as I want them to be, because if you're like me, what you enjoy is tangential thoughts. It is the mycelial consciousness I've talked about before, where things connect with each other and stimulate each other and feed off each other, and all of your knowledge is stronger because of the knowledge that came before, because of the knowledge it wants to have afterwards, and all the side aspects of it. Um, but yes, I will just now read out some of the notes that I had while I was reading The Killing Joke. My first one was Killing Joke is perfection. You will know from watching my videos that I do not say that often about any piece of art. Okay, I really don't. Um, the allusions to Bob Kane and the 30s stuff with Batmite, etc., is strange. That's one of the notes I made. Now, I'm not 100% sure that that's Batmite I'm talking about, but I'm literally getting my knowledge of Batmite from the Lego games, specifically Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, which, although not the best Lego game, Lego Batman 1 and 2 being genuine classics, um, I wanted to point out, and I hope I can find it, because what I'd actually like to do is ramble on long enough that I can find whatever it is I'm talking about. There is the Joker reflections that I was talking about, where he's looking at himself in the glass, and it's the same face positioned both times to show that it's him, but also to show that he's a dark figure. And what I have to say about this is his wife's smile is really unsettling. I looked at it for quite a while. But the problem with it is that looks like a Joker smile, like of one of his victims. So does that mean that she's a victim? Does it mean that he's just, because we're about to break out into present day Joker world, that the smile actually is sort of morphed in his memory specifically because it's about to become a clown he's looking at, and so she transmogrified in that way in the memory? Or did his wife just have a creepy smile? Then here we have him with a Batman with a playing card, but there's a photo here, and the photo literally has Bob Kane's signature. I understand you won't be able to see that at the bottom, which is strange. Obviously, Bob Kane being the creator of Batman. Again, I know that's disputed. I say again only because I mean again I'm on a tangent, but I know that's disputed. I'm sure he obviously must have contributed. There's no question about it. But I've seen people say that there's another artist who is actually, if not equally responsible, at least partially responsible, and many saying almost wholly responsible. So that I might put in the video as a really interesting research, because I want to know that. When I'm editing this, that will be the part that I'm most am looking forward to get to, because I actually really want to know who was that guy, and did Bob Kane actually just like steal all the glory, stolen valor, as it were. But anyway, can you see at the top of this here? There's that tiny little baby in a Batman costume. I believe that's who Batmite is, but I have to say I know not a thing about the character of Batmite. But you have a lot of the sort of Bat family in this picture before the Bat family was even really a concept, and I don't know who these people are. Like Alfred's there, Batman's there, Robin's there, right? But there's also a dog. So is that like Bat dog? And if it is, it doesn't look like the ones I've seen before. But again, that's probably because a lot of time has changed since those days. But then there's like a shining woman with a red cape, and there's also like a seemingly like a female Robin or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about those characters. So my question is, does acknowledging Bob Kane and this previous version of Batman, and like these really silly characters like Batmite and Bat Dog, does that basically like ruin the atmosphere and interrupt how you were feeling about this whole thing? And it's not the only time he does it, because if you look a page over, you can see here that the 1930s Batman is literally like there's a photo in Jim Gordon's scrapbook of that version of him. Now, in the flashbacks, when there's Joker's past where he gets he's in the in the, I actually think, is it Ace Chemicals? I feel like it's actually not. I feel like usually people say it's Ace Chemicals, but in the Killing Joke, I don't remember the word Ace Chemicals ever being in there. Um, but I'm just going to call it Ace Chemicals because that's what I know the place of Joker's origin to be from other media. But I feel like it's not Ace Chemicals in this comic. But anyway, to have the 1930s Batman design there sort of ruins things. And Barbara even says to him, like, um, well, she's like talking to him about the fact that he's looking at scrapbooks again. And he says, hey, look at this one. First time they met. Now, what year was that? That's like Moore saying, Alan Moore saying, haha, I understand that the Batman's been around for decades and not aged. And isn't that crazy? He's got such a long history, and things used to be like that. I mean, the photo even looks like it's from the past. Like he's the Joker facially looks entirely different. Batman looks entirely different. That one can be gotten away with more because you could say that his costume changed. Joker's face you can't say changed outside of its original change, obviously. So does that take you out of it to be reminded that you're in the medium of a comic? Is this the place to be metatextual? I'm not necessarily convinced by that, but it's also sweet that they want to pay tribute. It's quite obvious that that was their aim of it, was to pay tribute and what have you. But then, yeah, obviously iconic moments of Barbara being shot and what have you. And I would say with this, it's specifically the fact, and I wonder if anyone's ever talked about this before. Obviously, there was a bit of controversy around the fact that what Joker does in this is so sort of horrible, and even the artist at the end says in his afterword that he wouldn't personally have undergone such violence against Barbara if he had written the comic, and he thought that was kind of a like almost too far thing to do. But there's something interesting about what Joker's crime is, where on its head it would look like a criminal performing a sexual crime. He undresses her, he takes photographs of her naked, and obviously, if you ever heard about that in the newspaper, your assumption would be that she was assaulted in that regard. Um, Now, obviously, what he does is an enormous crime. I mean, he paralyzes her, and makes her vulnerable, and exposes her body to her father to torture him. But what I think is fascinating is, and if anyone felt differently about this, please do comment. But I really feel like any reader who ever reads of this crime does not imagine that Joker rapes her. I don't imagine there's a single reader who actually thinks that happened, because he's not motivated by that. And yet, a big part of the comics sort of idea is that after all this time, Batman still can't piece together what it is that motivates Joker, and what he can't figure out what he's going to do next. It's why he's not able to find him at the amusement park until the Joker sends him an invitation. He says after all these years, I still can't figure out what he's going to do next. I still don't know him, and he still doesn't know me, right? That was a paraphrase, but I think you can rule out the fact that he raped her. I think that he uh, is purely motivated by sending Gordon insane. So taking the pictures, paralyzing the daughter, taking her clothes off, is the way he knows to do that, and his method, and it's just a method. It's not to receive physical pleasure. I think that's right. I don't ever imagine Joker in the Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, psychosexual criminal category. I don't ever think anyone does. And I don't think that's because writers have refused to take him that far and that dark. I think it's just not who he is. It's not what he finds interesting or what he would find gratifying. So that was something interesting I had to say about that. Then with the amusement park stuff, I just wonder, because you have the freaks. I'm calling them freaks specifically because they're modeled after freak show freaks. That's what they were called, and it's very clearly being used in this very archetypal, exploitative sense. And whether Alan Moore wrote these to be uh, exposing some kind of darkness, or whether he's just using a trope because he thinks that people will find them freaky, or because and more likely just because he thinks they fit the kind of Joker carnival ground esque aesthetics. That is one of the weaker parts, I would say, only because you have to ask yourself the question, well, how did he get them to behave like that? And if you say it's a threat of death, I just don't buy it, because they seem to be, as you can see, enjoying the torture they're giving to Gordon, and there's no moment where it shows Joker needing to compel them to do anything. They just seem to be doing it, and they themselves are not like chained up or in any way seemingly under any obligations. And the next question is, if this was a abandoned, rundown, disused amusement park, well, in the sorry, not in the flashback, when Joker first buys it, from this guy who's unfortunately now Jokerized, he sees there are posters of these freaks, of the, for example, the two-headed baby and the three-legged guy or whatever, and different things like that. We see those posters. Well, how did Joker track them down and bring them all back? And why they're all in the same condition they were in before? And why did they all agree? And like logistically, how did he get them all there in that time and get them all to agree and what have you? And the only possible explanation you can kind of go for, it doesn't really still explain anything, is that um, the Joker talks about them all being insane and they join in with it, but I'm not convinced it really works because they join in with his song here, which I really wonder what the melody is of. If anyone knows the melody of the song, please tell me what other song, for example, has that melody so I can read it with that melody, because the one I was reading, it didn't always line up with the cadence that I was hoping for. There was sometimes I had to kind of speed through a line um or just kind of interrupt the flow of things to really get it. But they're clearly like complicit in the whole thing. They're dancing with him and everything. So yeah, I don't really know how that can be explained, but I will say that then what happens is we get this kind of. Do you see this sound here where it says badump, badump, right? Every time the roller coaster is kind of trundling along, you get this badump, badump, badump sign, and all the way down here, badump, 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 right? Um, the sound of the coaster that Gordon is on, I think it's great because badump is obviously the sound of the human heart as well, so it represents fear and intensity. But also, it's a great way of showing the amount of time that's passing, but not just showing it, but showing in the best way, which is showing in a way that demands that a reader figure out for themselves how long do they think it went. So this badump is happening, he's getting a poster, he's going around and asking these thugs if they know where Joker is. Another badump is happening while he's in this totally other room dealing with mob bosses, people like Falcone and things like that, and meeting Cobblepot in prison. And you have to ask yourself logistically, how long did it take to get to these different locations? But is it one night? He's prowling the streets where there are streetwalkers and things around, and he's hanging out on a gargoyle as well, surveying. So how long did it take for him to do this? Was it in one night? And if it was obviously not quickly because the human body can only get to so many places, even if you're Batman, in such amount of time. So that tells you how long, badum, 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 that Gordon was going round and round and round and round, exposed to these pictures of Barbara and around all these freaks torturing him, and Joker, totally just trying to get in his mind and stuff. And it continues all the way on to the next page. Badum, 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 badum. I think that's great. It's like, the onomatopoeia stuff in comics was always an element that sort of screamed that it was childish. It is so well used in this comic because, as you can see, none of the panels that are just like random, well, not random, but none of the panels that are just ordinary bits of storytelling use any onomatopoeic sounds. It's only for ones that literally contribute to the understanding and enjoyment of the story. And another thing I love, can you see here? The bat signal has been called, and Batman jumps onto the roof. And you see the jump. Then down there, when he leaves, you see him jump off the roof. Now, why do I like that? Well, firstly, the physicality looks equally real as it does look impressive. Sorry, what I was saying was that Batman's not being made to be like superhuman. It's sort of feasible that he would be able to do those things with a cape that was able to glide and what have you. But it still looks impressive and beyond anything we could do. We wouldn't want to take that sort of height as we collapse onto the. It would be a collapse onto the roof, or jumping off a roof with that traffic down below. We just wouldn't want to take that dive. But the reason I love it is because we've all seen the Batman scene where he's talking to the police, or usually Gordon on a roof, and then, when he's finished with the conversation, camera pans to him, he's not there anymore. Camera goes back to Gordon. I hate when he does that, something like that. So bored of that, and I've never liked it even once. I hate that trope. I wish writers would stop doing it. It's incredibly lazy. And it's just stupid because your mind then goes, well, did he just run off and jump off? Like, realistically, surely his boots made noise and you would see the whole wing coming out and the flapping. And even if he didn't, it's still like rude. Like, Gordon's your friend, and it was just so unnecessary and so pointlessly, needlessly dramatic. Um, so yeah, I'm really glad that. I don't know whether that was put in as a response to Moore hating that trope, or if it's just that Moore's being a normal human being and putting it in how it really looked. But I really appreciate the fact that it's there. Um, then here, when we have the Red Hood, um, we have Joker as Red Hood here. This sort of binocular vision panel I actually really like because I think a lot of people wouldn't maybe think about it. They just say, oh, well, yeah, it's red, whatever, because that's how he's seeing. But it's interesting because this 1930s style Batman, where the cowl was actually more like devil horns. I really hope you can see that. I feel like it's impossible to know how well I'm holding this. I'm aware that if I had a proper sort of handheld camera, I'd be able to really sort of review the footage with you as you see it, but I just hope it comes out well. If not, I'll try and put photos of the panels somehow in the editing so you can see it better. But the red combined with the devil horns and the fact that all of Batman's sort of physicality in this sort of memory flashback stuff is so kind of, he's much more demonic. I mean, even like, look at that, look at the cape there, where the whole cape is kind of really like something out of Devilman Crybaby. It's so in this sort of satanic field of aesthetics, which I love. I'm an absolute sucker for anything that's using that kind of sinful side of Christian worldviews, but that aesthetic with the well, not Christian world, but Christian dark aesthetics, like a Dante, for example, who I'm looking to the right because I have Dante there. Um, that anything to do with hell or devil or demons and things, I can't help finding compelling in stories. Um, and that Batmobile looks amazing, doesn't it? And um, the fact that I mean, this made me say, look, how many times has Joker got you with that trick where you're getting sprayed by the knob of his cane or the flower that he's got or something like. I mean, do you really by now not realize that if you leap on the Joker, he's going to have some sort of acidic toy for you? I mean, really? And then Batman just casually has like an antidote, but like, is it not possible that Joker had an acid for you that you didn't have an antidote for, like something that's so caustic or in just containing some compound that's so violent and vicious? I mean, that to me is silly because if Joker is capable of piercing Batman's outfit, which actually the costume in this comic, they've gone to great lengths to show you that it's kind of cloth, that it's fabric that actually is terrible and not terrible, but terrible and able to be destroyed quite easily. And there's a moment where he gets hit on the head and the cowl pulled down. In fact, I'll find that because I know it's soon, but he just looks so vulnerable because usually you think of like bulletproof Batman, and the scene of Pattinson as he walks through that corridor and he's getting shot at by machine guns all at the same time. This Batman's not that. Look at that. Look at that. Okay. And then that was the one I was thinking of where he pulls the cowl down and it's clearly just cloth. Um, if he's that exposed, then yes, a gunshot to the head will do him. it is insanity that he's not just been shot to death. He's dealing with violent armed criminals every day, and his suit is just cloth. Yes, he should be shot to pieces by now. Um, and then and then the interesting thing was with this, with the click, 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 right? I assumed that was a prop gun because of the click, 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 and that it was like a joke from Joker. But he looks actually down after he fires it. Um, and then particularly because I thought, well, you can't trust anything he says. Again, in the afterword, the artist says that Joker ran out of bullets. So what's the mechanism in place? Maybe I just don't know guns well enough, but I didn't realize there was a mechanism in place in revolvers where something could come out afterwards after it was empty. I didn't think that was how it worked, but anyway, I would love to know about that. So this was interesting. You'll notice I haven't talked at all about the famous ending. Um, I have something to say other than what everyone else has to say because I don't want to talk about that panel just because it's been talked about and I'm not interested in things that I've seen discussed. You thought I was going to say in things that have already been discussed. I'm sure almost all of this has already been discussed, but I haven't seen it discussed, so that's why I'm interested in it. But actually, that final panel here of the rain, I love how cyclical that is with the fact that that was the first panel as well. It was the rain accumulating, um, which I will just quickly summon for you there. That's the first panel. So it's totally cyclical. And, you know, the English teacher in me says that we have to say why it's cyclical. We can't just leave that effect there without saying why. What is the effect? Or that technique there, rather. And to me, it's very much because this sort of circular nature is a huge element in what the graphic novel has to say. The Joker and the Batman's relationship, it starts off with them talking to each other and saying, how long are we going to keep doing this? One of us is going to end up dead if we keep doing this. Um, so the whole idea of circularity is absolutely entrenched in the whole story. So it makes total sense that the thing itself is a loop. If you really want to know, I do not think Batman kills him at the end. His hand placement's quite low. I think he's actually just going, Jesus Christ, let me finally laugh for this guy, and I'm just, you know, I'm just gonna do that. And there's police coming anyway, so it's like probably also a way to like kind of hold him while they come or what have you, because you see police lights in the background. So no, I don't think Batman kills him, but I do think that it that those panels represent that circularity, which adds to what I'm saying that he didn't kill him, because the circularity means that it's carrying on. If they didn't do that, if it was like some kind of panel where like rain dried up, right, or evaporation, even maybe, but something that signaled that the circularity, excuse me, that the circularity has been broken, that would have told me that maybe he killed him, but I don't think so. And I think that's pretty solid reasoning for why. But I'm sure there are people who have like really strong opinions on the other side of it. Um, but yeah, that's everything I have to say about The Killing Joke. Go and watch Phantasm, read The Killing Joke. It has led me down to, I'm currently reading Watchmen. I'm reading it on my Kindle and really, really enjoying it so far. I'm not that far through, but I'm really, really enjoying it. I've seen the Snyder film and I really liked that, but everyone dogged on it. So that's one of my controversial opinions. What I'm excited for is I've heard that, as all Snyder films seem to have, that there's an extended director's cut. And then I found out there's two director's cuts that are different of Watchmen. Why? Why? I'm going to research that and put the reason on the screen. But yeah, my God, why are there two director's cuts? So I do want to seek whatever one of those is more, I guess, the one that Snyder wants us to see, the one that's maybe longer, the one that's more comprehensive. I do want to watch that because I really like that film. Um, but I love the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Again, Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition is the one that I like. Um, and so yeah, and Rebel Moon I haven't seen, but I do want to see. Again, everyone dogged on it, but I'm at the point where it means nothing to me anymore. It's like I just want to see what that director makes because I like what that director makes, and I know that that to me is more credibility than everyone saying it sucks. And I do wonder how much of everyone saying it sucks relates to them watching the PG-13 one that Snyder himself called a joke in an interview, and he just made it so to fulfill that part of his Netflix contract, and then he could put out his extended director cuts that are R-rated in his actual vision of the film. I I think that maybe there's every chance that all the sour discourse is about the PG-13s, and that actually if I watch the real thing and never even know about those, that I'll have a really positive view. And that probably just very few people actually gave that one a chance because they just watched that one and they're not going to watch the same film again. I don't know that. That's just a guess. But yes, he also said to watch them both kind of as one film. And so I also imagine that there's every chance that people watched the first half and thought, oh, lots of stuff is unresolved and that didn't go anywhere. And so, but they sort of dogged on it before part two even came out. These are just theories, but I just know that people can be so kind of judgmental and so prejudicial when new things come around. They always hate something that they end up loving or that society at large ends up loving in retrospect. But yeah, that is pretty much it.